Welcome to my What If Civilization Started Over series. If you basically the basic concept is in the name, what if civilization started over? Starting from an empty map, we're just going to restart civilization. Starting with a singular country that is going to begin around the Cyanide Peninsula. Formalizing a small base of power, forming very much basically just around the coast of Egypt and then Palestine, forming a very small little state for now. As they continue to forming slowly across the coast of Egypt, and even continuing up and across the coast of Anatolia, reaching close to near Turkey, and even starting to go down into areas of modern-day Saudi Arabia's coast. Staying very close to the coast and not really expanding heavily outwards due to there not being a lot of water. Even slowly, the base of power would start to come around the head of the Nile as they'd start to go down and explore the Nile River as a potential due to its close access to water. A new leader would be crowned as the original tribe's leader would die, which would cause a group around the capital area to break away, to formalize their own. They formalized just around the Cyanide, really, around the original base of power. Before the capital city would officially be established of the empire, building a capital city of the new blue team, who would decisively found its own religion before it would decide to unite with the red team to restore the empire's borders. Now looking at faith mode, there's one faith on the world. You see the blue team then decide to build another major city up near the edge of their borders, before launching a small expansion down the Nile a bit, and even fully starting to consolidate around the Cyanide as a true and little bit of Egypt, establishing a very much true strong base of power in what would be modern-day Egypt, before and expanding slightly beyond the coastlines they've been occupying into slightly fertile areas. Eventually, a group from the blue team would decide to. While blue wants to start consolidating, this group wants to establish its own state, adopting the flag color of red, but not being the same team. They'd move up into around the Istanbul Turkish region, moving up and establishing around basically Istanbul, establishing in Turkey and Greece, going through the mountain range to almost break heavily away from the blue team. Starting to establish in Turkey, they'd fully begin establishing a state. As the blue team would then decide to continue its goal of starting to, unite its own little empire together, before another group would decide to branch away, forming a small yellow, and around the Kuwait area, and in modern-day Iraq, would form a new country, mainly forming just around the many major rivers of the Middle East, being a heavily dial civilization because of that, using small longboats to small canoes to get across this whole area, not really having any real central base of power besides the rivers that they go across. And due to most of them linking pretty well together around Kuwait, would be where the most of the people live, in the where major supply hubs would reach out from. Even as soon, though, a lot of migrants from the blue team, which hasn't really expanded a lot, since would start to migrate to the yellow team, who would decide to start attempting to consolidate in the Middle East slightly, starting to consolidate a semi-new territorial. Not going to the mountains a lot, they'd establish themselves as a decently strong state, and even start to going a lot into modern day Iran's coast, and learning about this small strait, they'd rush small settlements down the Middle East and fully discover the Strait of Hormuz and turn it into a very prosperous new area for their heavy migration and population boom. The blue team would finally gain resources and power enough to continue its small expansion, expanding to create a land border with the yellow team, and even expanding its own claims, expanding them minorly to create decently strong states, spanning its coast in Africa, and continuing down the Nigerian River, now expanding more rapidly as it goes, and starting to link down as well. The red team would launch another minor expedition into, well, would suffer a breakaway state. Less of a new country, but more of a revolt, as two brothers would attempt, the brothers would start fighting over the throne, which would start a kind of civil unrest, as the orange team would adopt up north and in small pockets. The red team would soon establish. The red team and orange team would soon start fighting, but the orange team, which has the oldest son ruling it, would start to truly dominate the red team, ending the red country's existence, and then continuing on their plans of island hopping and expanding into Europe, readopting the red team's coloration, though. Expanding further into Europe, they expand into modern-day Greece and Bulgaria before establishing over Crete, and even starting to truly establish in the rocky terrain, using the fact of them originating from exploration through the mountainous terrain of Turkey to help them in their ability to become a decently powerful country. The blue team would then launch campaigns would launch a huge campaign to, well, fully establish itself in this region. This would be considered the core blue team lands, as now this capital city starts to function, ruling this as a separate province of the blue team, being the first country to introduce many different provinces instead of just one centralized government ruling over all these lands. The blue team would soon suffer a split, though, due to this, instead of due to, well, becoming a little too big. So we'd see a true orange team break out from the blue team, taking over the newer capital city, and even taking over this coastline. And the cyanide would be put under their control, as the blue team would start to lose it. Would now officially change its color to an almost lighter yellow, as this country, as over here, this, I'm just changing around colors, so their colorations would slightly change. Let's go to faith mode as well to change this to be a yellow. Okay, I was changing around the colors because I kind of didn't like that being yellow over there. So we'd see the orange team soon adopt the red team's faith, leaving the yellow team's religion. Before, the two faiths would almost blend together, establishing a unique orange faith in this region. Due to slight bits of chaos that have been going on, a settling group, would start to arrive in Europe, crossing what becomes known as crossing the Alps and establishing themselves in modern-day southern Italy due to the fertile lands, establishing a good rival to the red team and becoming a decently powerful country, not really going heavily past the Alps yet, but becoming a decently powerful country, using small knowledge of mercantile, also creating a small stronghold on Sicily. This blue team in the east would basically have to start expanding into the Middle East, as Iran's mountainous terrain becomes hard for them to start to expanding heavily into the Middle Eastern regions, creating a small cultural divide between the Iran and their blue team overlords, despite all originating from the same country. The orange team would then launch its own expansion into the east, fully conquering this coastline and even establishing diplomatic relations with the red team by creating a border with them, as the trade routes now mainly go between Istanbul and this orange team city, yellow, as the blue team really doesn't have a lot of trade besides internally, which is starting to heavily hurt its economy. The yellow team, who is starting to gain a new leader, who would decide to attempt the province system again, but this time attempt it by placing it near the edge of the country, but still connected to the Nile so information can get between the two major cities faster. The red team would use its new population and military to help expand into modern day, Turkey, and even learning about the island of, Cairo. Not Cairo. Expanding further and becoming the almost a good diplomatic highland in the new order. The green team would finally gain some more people and would fully take over Sicily, and would even land on Sardinia and Corsica and fully establish decent little borders. Since most of these islands are decently jumbled together, they're able to control them and starting to expand, into the Baltic a little bit, starting to truly scare the red team a little bit of now having a more expansionist neighbor to their west. The blue team would decide to adopt a faith and take on the yellow faith. before a new religion would pop up and trump out the yellow faith. The blue team would decide to build a fort in their original settling area, as it's the good bridging point between the old empire and the new coastal Middle Eastern empire. The red team would launch again a small expansion, launching it into modern-day Bulgaria and Serbia and North Macedonia. Continuing to launch, they'd launch the expansion mainly just launching it into the Baltics, even reaching into bits of modern-day Romania, before fully starting to become the, true powerhouse before a revolution would start. In some areas of the country, mainly in the original areas, a new group had started to arise, known as forming a new country in modern-day Greece, capturing Crete, and becoming a thorn in the side, expanding decently fast as well, and even making trade harder between the red. The red team would quickly finish its expansion into Bulgaria, start to relaunch an invasion of the Greeks, launching such a major attack that the Greek rebels had not really expected, putting down the Greek rebellion very fast, as this now red team would start to really hammer down on other ethnic groups, even forcing the orange team to give up land to them for border security, as I say. The orange team diplomatic relations after that would go down heavily with the red team, as the red team would start to truly debate on a true invasion of the orange team, as the capital is very close to them, as they continue using more power to become a decently force that starts to scare the orange and blue team into to formalize a almost mutual defensive pact. The yellow team would do minor expansion. As the province system would work, they'd reach Libya, would truly start to expand across their empire, gaining heavy coastline in Africa, and even start to expand the new province capital. The team would launch a huge expansion into into the Baltics again, before starting to meet Italy, whose troop would decide we'd see a group of people branch off from the yellow, and Italians would send people there, forming a new country. It would quickly link up to the yellow team as a trade partner, and would become a decently powerful force in the new era, forming Carthage, even discovering modern-day Spain, and starting to expand there, becoming one of the strongest countries that popped up and expanded very fast due to it having great relations with the yellow team and green team, aka Italy, or Italians, who would build a capital city, as the red team would decide they can't just have the Italians build a cool city, so they'd build their own. Carthage would decide this new Carthaginian country would though quickly start to fall apart, suffering due to the fact it expanded rapidly, that not as many people as they fought actively cared. So we'd see Old Carthage and New Carthage. The original landing zone, which has great relations with the yellow team, would break off from the purple team, which would establish the almost Carthaginian rivalry that we'd see take place. As we'd see New Carthage, though, also struggle as as the yellow team, realizing the chaos, decided to establish a almost sister republic, a sister empire, which could eventually merge in around Carthage. So the purple original Carthage would also suffer a small exclave as their Spanish area would revolt out. Carthage would adopt the blue team's faith before founding their own. They gain a new leader who promised to restore Carthage to its former glory, launching a full-scale invasion of old Carthage, linking up with it and fully taking it over, before even the yellow team would start to surrender some of their client states' land. We'd see Carthage decide to build a capital city before deciding to fully force the return of all Carthaginian lands from the yellow team and relaunch a expansion into Spain, which would not fully succeed in crushing it, but would succeed enough. And that is the end of my first What If Civilization Started Over episode.